So friends, in today's message, we're going to talk about what it means to not lose heart. It's verse 16 in what we just read. Do not lose heart. And we will do that in the context of this week that we've just gone through as a country, where, of course, the news is bad, often daily, sometimes hourly. And this week there have been two very public people who have died by suicide. I want you to know before I begin my sermon that I'm going to be talking about suicide and depression and hopelessness in my sermon. And I trust that you all will tend to yourselves and take care of yourselves during this message. So as we prepare for the word preached, would you join with me, please, your hearts and minds in prayer? Oh God, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of each of our hearts be found acceptable in your sight. For you are our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. Pastor Connie has a hidden talent. She has lots of hidden talents, by the way, but one in particular is going to grace our chancel for the whole summer. When her daughter Mara was small, Mara wanted to make 1,000 origami peace cranes. And so they made 1,000 origami peace cranes. Pastor Connie can whip off an origami peace crane for you in nothing flat. This was not information that was downloaded into her brain by the universe when she was born. No, she had to practice it. Yes? Yes. And of course, we could all sit all day and listen to Brian play the piano. And I know some of that is natural talent. What a face. Oh, he goes. But Brian has to practice. You recall Easter morning, yes? The prelude that Brian plays every Easter, Vidor's Toccata, and we erupt in applause after the prelude every Easter morning. It's because Brian practices. Ilsa can field dress a deer. Did you know that? You had to practice that, didn't you? Yeah. Lisa Fowler? Lisa can parallel park a fire truck. What? You had to practice that, didn't you? Yes. David Wilcox up here in the choir? David can tie a bowline on, I can't even pronounce it. That's how much I have to practice it. He can tie a bowline on a bite. Did I get it right? Sure. Tom Ward can, on very short notice, be asked to lead the Illinois Marathon on his bike and be able to do it like that. Why? Because he's practiced. There are things we can all do, and we can only do them because we practice. I was having a conversation a couple of months ago, actually with one of my old seminary professors, and he said to me, you know, Leah, I'm not like you. He said, you're always able to see the good and the positive in everything. And I said, oh, no, I can't. No, I can't. Ask anybody who's been the moderator of the church. Ask Pastor Connie. On any given day, I'm like, the sky is falling. The sky is falling. Because I tend to be a realist. I have to practice hope in order to see it. Which is why, if you're one of my Facebook friends, you know that question that I ask every couple of weeks or every couple of days, depending on how the world is turning. Check in. How are you? Where did you see hope today? Asking that question and forcing myself to look for hope on a daily basis is a practice of my faith. It's one of the ways in which I cultivate the courage to not lose heart. In today's passage, that's the line that's the takeaway. When Paul said to us, do not lose heart. He's saying that not because it was an automatic response for him. He's saying it because it was a practice for him, not losing heart. So the editors of Political Theology, which is a website, in talking about this particular passage, they set the scene for us so we understand where that encouragement comes from. They say Paul was threatened by disillusionment, fear, and weariness. He spent much of his time in prison. He suffered at the hands of naysayers and of evil rulers. And he was frequently alone and without friends. And yet he says, we do not lose heart. We have to practice not losing heart because it is so easy to do. And we know that Paul knows it was easy to do as well. If you were to open a Bible and look at the passage just before today's reading, you would see this familiar phrase. We have this treasure in earthenware jars or in jars of clay, some of the translations read, to show that this all-surpassing power is from God and not from us. We are hard-pressed on every side, but not crushed, perplexed, but not in despair. Oh yes, it sounds like Paul moves right into a motivation speech, but he begins with the reminder that we are human beings and we are fragile. We are as fragile as jars of clay. I was reminded how fragile jars of clay are this morning when the thunder and lightning woke me up at 4 o'clock in the morning, and all of a sudden I heard a crash on my back porch. When we got up and out of bed, David went out to find that some of our flower pots had been knocked over and they were broken. Storms come through life. Storms rage through life. I don't have to tell you that. You know. You live it. You might be in a storm right now. We, as a country, are in a storm right now. And we are fragile. Which means we have to practice not losing heart. Because if we don't practice it, we'll forget how to do it. But as people of the Christian faith, we are always reminded that the practices we keep, they're not for us alone. These are communal practices. These are corporate practices. This is the work of the church. Not losing heart is the work of the church. One of my colleagues, Sarah Lund, over there in Indianapolis, Sarah Lund wrote a book called Blessed Are the Crazy. And the book is about mental health and depression and communities of faith. I'd love to bring her here. You all would, I think we would be really gifted by what Sarah has to say. So this week she wrote a blog post reminding us that just this month, the Center for Disease Control has said that suicide rates have increased in almost every state. That in 2016, nearly 45,000 people died by suicide, making it one of the top 10 causes of death in the United States of America. And with the high-profile deaths of Kate Spade and Anthony Bourdain within the span of just a couple of days, of course, suicide is trending on social media. It's all around us. And yet, as people of faith, we're called to not lose heart. And as people of faith, we're called to do that together. So what does that look like? Well, there are 7 suggestions for what communities can do to change this culture. We're going to post this on our Facebook page, and we'll send it out to you as well. But I wanted to name them today, here in worship, so that we would understand that these 7 steps, it's sacred work. It's a practice of our faith, keeping community with each other and practicing not losing heart. It's the work we do together. Here are these 7 steps. 1, identify and support people who are at risk for suicide. 2, teach coping and problem-solving skills to help people manage challenges with their relationships, jobs, health, or other concerns. 3, promote safe and supportive environments. This includes safely storing medications and firearms to reduce access among people at risk. Do you remember my sermon from several months ago with the refrain of "take them away"? Yes, if you know someone who's at risk for self-harm and they have a gun, take it away from them. 4, offer activities that bring people together so they feel connected and not alone. 5, connect people at risk to effective and coordinated mental and physical health care. 6, expand options for temporary help for those struggling to make ends meet. And 7, prevent future risk of suicide among those who have lost a loved one to suicide. It's a hard time to be alive, friends, but we're called to not lose heart. Number 4 in this list, offer activities that bring people together so they feel connected and not alone. It's perhaps one of the best things we do together as church. Every Sunday morning, here we are. Every Monday night, downstairs, here we are. I have a sense that I'm not the only person in the world who's afraid of being cosmically alone, yes? There are sharks and bears aplenty out in the world. But it's when we feel alone that we begin to lose heart. So we have to be in the practice of not losing heart. I want to leave you with this last story. I was back at Jubilee Cafe on Monday night after the medical leave that I was on, and then a holiday and a week away at a continuing education event. And so there I stood at our little welcome center, smiling as soon as people walked in and saying, "Welcome to Jubilee Cafe. We're so glad you're here." At 5 o'clock on the dot, when the door opened, the first person in the door was one of our regulars. And he smiled and said, "Oh, Pastor Leah, we've missed you." And I said, "Oh, thank you so much." And we gave each other hugs. And then he said, "I had some dental work done today, so I can't actually eat anything, but I didn't want to miss being here tonight. I didn't want to miss seeing all of my friends and you. It's the practice of not losing heart, that you show up even when it's literally a pain to do so. What practices do you keep of not losing heart? And what practices can we keep together? It's a rough time to be alive, but together, we can continue down this long road toward that resurrection promise, a promise that we practice every single day. We decide to not let hopelessness win. Every single time we practice not losing heart. Amen.